Spoiler alert, spoiler alert. All right, we are back with James Reid, JMD Reid, and his Shadow of the Dragon series. Hello, hello.
Hello. How are you
All
all
right.
doing out there?
Yeah, how's everybody doing today? All right, tell us the title of the book we were talking about today.
We are talking about Guilt of Sacrifice, book 3 of Shadow of the Dragons. This is kind of the end of like the first arc of the series. It kind of worked out where like each 3 books is like its own little arc in the series. It wasn't planned, but it kind of feels that way. And I would say book 3 definitely ends like has some major changes to the story, and like they kind of reached their goal. Like because like very much like somewhere in late in book 1, like Uden has the idea of like getting to this lake. Like maybe that's where they need to go to help her. And then get to that lake at the end of book 3. And it's just another step on the journey. But it's like a goal that was there from early on that they had been working towards. And now they have like a new goal at the end of book 3, kind of a roadmap of places we have to go and visit before
Right,
we get this
right.
done.
Yeah, I was getting kind of sad throughout the book, knowing that when they got to the lake, they were going to get rid of Lady Eathjow. And then we got there and, she survived and everything. And I was like, yay, more Lady Eathjow. Because she made me happy in the first book, because I was expecting like the dragons to be these horrible creatures. And it was just nice to not have, like you say, a monolith of characters. They have more than one side, just like we as humans do. So I wore my green wings today to honor Lady Eathjow's survival.
Yeah, she gets to keep on going for now.
So,
We'll see. No
yeah,
promises.
yeah, don't tell me that. So, uh, yeah, no promises. I'm not expecting any promises. I'm not expecting any confirmations of anything, but I really am enjoying the mystery of the story. It's like your world is so intricate and so huge, but at the same time, it's manageable. And I love that. I love learning about it and feeling like I'm part of it. And at the same time, just knowing there's so much more to learn. And it makes you eager to read the next book, because you don't feel like you know everything, yet you feel like you know enough to be pulled forward and, want to see what happens next.
Yeah, I don't want to bury you in like information about the world. Um, I mean, it's a big world, and there are places on that map that will never see the light of day in the books. They probably don't even get mentioned in the books. Like I think there's countries that won't even get named in the entire series. They just never they just never mattered in the end, right? But they were there on the world building. So I needed to have a world. It needed to be bigger than the story. I think to make a good fantasy series, I think you need to have a bigger world than your story will go to, so that it can feel like there's stuff happening beyond the site. And I'd like to do just little name drops, like just name places, especially places I know that the story will go to one day. So I like to just prime those names like in the back of the reader's minds. They go like, wait, have I heard that name before? I think I have, maybe, or isn't that place where this is at or something like that? So like it's there in the back of your mind, but it's not like overwhelming you with details, because you don't need those details until like the characters are really until the story matters there. You don't need all those details. You just need the feel like the world's bigger than it is.
Right. Yes, I love that. I want to print the map out and like have it, so I can have my little Sharpie and just like travel with them and see where they're going, because at first it was just little tiny pieces. We knew the island of Shy, and we knew, a little bit about the Horde lands, and then the Echo Mountains, was before that and all that. But now I'm like, okay, I'm starting to learn a little more about the world and hearing that they're traveling farther east. And I'm like, okay, now it's time to take it down and start tracking.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, because at the end, Boney has that vision, and one of the places it shows is literally as far east as you can go. So
Right, where the sun is closest.
yeah, so yeah, that's literally they're going east, and that's why that northern continent's so long. So there's a lot of east for them to go across.
There you go. Yeah, I love how they they reach a goal and it's like, yay, we reached the lake. And then she's like, by the way, we still have a long way to go. but it's great because I'm like, if they got to the lake and that was the end, then we wouldn't have more books to read. So
No.
speaking of the continuing journey, tell me why they're continuing. Why do they have to keep going?
Well, they need to figure out how to get Lady Isdral out of Phony. That's one thing. But they're also realizing, there's the whole apostasy's plan that it's not good, that they're doing bad things, so they kind of need to be stopped. They also need to restore Lumi. So in book 2, of course, they were surprised when they met another Lumi, and she merged and formed into a bigger Lumi, a little more intelligent one. And then they found another piece of Lumi here in the lake, and that's also where the vision happened. And this has changed Lumi again. She's now like a toddler, so she can speak a bit, but she's very babyish still. And Voni had a vision of 4 more pieces of her. And so they're like, okay, we think we have to go get these pieces, that this is kind of what we need to do to sort of help Voni out, to maybe foil the apostasy. Who knows what else we'll be doing, but it's like a roadmap that they have. Their next stop is, of course, Desert Ruins. And so that's their next stop, and there is a desert to the east, so that's useful. Yeah. And then they'll have to go out to the Eastern Island. And then, of course, the fact that the bad guys have one of the pieces they need, so that's an issue. So that's going to be a difficult one.
One is in Paradise.
And one is in Lost Paradise that no one has set foot on in 3,000 years because the eternal gale surrounds it and no ships can sail through it. So
no pressure.
That's another problem they're going to have to overcome. That's a problem that we learned the apostasy. That's one of the apostasy's very early goals. The first thing we meet Shasha Ruin doing is she's trying to find the key to basically open up the eternal gale. That's what her original mission was before she got pulled off to go hunt down Voni. So,
right. Yeah, she was in that. I remember her. She was on the boat, and that's kind of where I learned the difference in the drake kind and the shrubman, because I think she had both on her boat, right?
Yeah, she had every race on her boat.
Yeah.
So she even had a worm.
Oh, that's true. Right.
Boat. Yeah.
And so that's where we were with her, and they were trying to get past. It's the maelstrom, and you said
they're trying to. Well, they need the key to the maelstrom because that kind of is the key to the however the eternal gale works, it's concealed by the maelstrom or something.
Oh, okay.
So they kind of need to. It's like this is their goal, and perhaps I haven't revealed that connection yet, but because it's kind of all, I don't know. I've written the entire series, so it's kind of hard to remember. I'm fairly certain though that they kind of know that this is why they're doing it, because they need to get in. They need to get to paradise.
Right.
It's one of the end goals of the apostasy. Which they do talk about how we're going to find paradise again and stuff. So that definitely is things talked about by now. So
yeah,
so this is a step that they need to find this laboratory of this long dead Drake woman mage named Reed Drake Tongue, and she's has the key to the maelstrom, and I don't know. We'll see what that happens, what that means, how that affects the gale. But yeah, that's kind of and you get progress reports in that expedition every time we go visit the apostasy. So you could be like, it's not going well.
Right.
They're not making progress. It's kind of so their plans are kind of stalled out while our heroes are kind of going about the world, because that's a good thing. And of course they also need Lady Isdral, so that's another problem. That's another hiccup in their plans. So the apostasies, things aren't going smooth for them because of Yuden.
Yeah, mostly
Yuden just ruined everything. Yuden just ruined all their plans.
Tell me more about Yuden, because Yuden. What did I just say? Udom. Anyway, Yuden, because I'm just loving hearing about the different sides of him, and how he's learning about himself. It's just such it's like an identity story, but not the typical where that's the entire focus of the whole story. It's not like you're in his inner monologue the whole time, but you get pieces of it enough to see kind of his journey and him growing up. Which is really cool.
Well, Voni's finally broken his heart. So she's like, it's not happening. We're not going to end up together. And so he's kind of dealing with a breakup, and that's never good, and especially when it's your first crush. So he's kind of, it's like he wrapped his whole identity up in this in it, and like all being a hero and saving her, and now it's just, he's not going to get the girl at the end, right? So it's like all the stories lied to him. He's kind of lost for a bit in this book. He tries to figure out like why is he doing this. Then it's not going to be to get Boney now. So is he still going to be heroic? What does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to be a man? Is it just like impressing the girl, or is there something else to it? So that's kind of what Yuda's trying to figure out while dealing with these sort of hurt feelings, and which causes strain between him and Voni, because
Right.
he's a teenager, so he's not maybe handling it as best as he can. It was a hard thing because I wanted him to not handle it, but I also didn't want him to go too far. Well, I kind of was trying to ride a tightrope and try to mend them so I can get them back to get them to being friends by the end of the book. Because I didn't want this whole hurtness between them for like more than a book. It's
Yeah.
like I wanted him to get through that and kind of come out the other side of this book, and I think it worked.
Yeah.
As the author, you kind of like, I'm not sure it worked, but no one's ever complained that it felt rushed or anything. So
I think it helps that, he's wanting to be Voni's hero, but at the same time, he just wants to be a hero. And I think with him getting, the confirmation from the Hordemen, defeating him in the matchup, and then gaining their honor, gaining their respect. Thaddy thinking he's good enough to have the blood spear, and then Ruan later giving him, she gave it to Dowell, the bright lance, giving that to Dowell to use. And then he also, of course, has the sword. And so he has, and then at one point he's like, and I have a basically goddess of illumination by my side. So I think there's a lot of things in there that are therapeutic to him, that give him that understanding that he is more than just Voni's hero. He has more about him than just that. So I don't think it went too fast, because I think that there was so much going on for him that was positive, even though it was a struggle with the breakup. He just saw more of the world than just him and Voni at that point. And I'm sure Zai helps a little bit.
yeah, well, Zai's interesting because she's a very flighty and carefree character, but then she'll just like talk to you about like deep, serious things with a very confident air, and it's different. But that came from her role as a seer. She spent a lot of time doing couples therapy. Yes, like
Oh
couples are
yeah.
like, we need to see the future. Yeah, so I'm like, this is why she had a lot of time with people like asking to see their futures and stuff, and usually it was just relationship stuff. So she was like, she started to see like these pitfalls people kept falling in. So she
That was
learned.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. That was so brilliant that she did couples therapy and then ends up with Yudon and Voni on their journey, and just is able to say, well, this is what's going on. Here's your motivation. This is why you're doing this. But it makes sense that it's not like the couples therapy was a plot fix. Like you just threw that in there to make sure that she was able to be there for them. No, it makes total sense. If you have people, normal village people, coming to you for advice about the future, a lot of them it's going to be about relationships. Like that's what we're built upon. And I feel like that makes total sense. That was the small revelation that she offered to the community while she was there.
So I like that. I like using the characters to solve their own problems or solve each other's problems, and try to do it organically. That's always the challenge, to do things organically and not to have everything like contrived or to come out of nowhere.
Right.
That's at least the plan, right?
I think we talked about how reality is an important part of fantasy.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Like you have to have a real reaction. You can't just have them have a great adventure that is also traumatizing and then be cool with it and the next day, do something different. Unless they're brainwashed, like we talked about in the last video, to just, um, kill without any emotion, then they're gonna feel it. They're gonna see that was terrible. That's a terrible thing that just happened, and they have to heal from that. And I think you've just brought together such an amazing cast of characters to show the support they need. I love how Dawa and Thaf have the interactions that they do, the push and the pull, and the ability to be bold like Thaf, but also be a little more reserved like Dawa. They work together, and I think having them as part of the group is so dynamic. And for them to be, Thaf is so funny to me, how he watches Voni and Yudon and Zai, and he's like, how does this work? And then even better when he realizes that Voni doesn't like Yudon at all, and he's so very confused at that point. But I think that's I think that comes later. But anyway, so that it's just having that group together, and then of course at the end to bring Ruan into it as well. That I was so excited, of course, but just having that end scene was so powerful. And one of my favorite parts was when Ruan finally broke, her allegiance to the apostasy enough to give Dawa the bright lance and say, go, finish it, take care of Lady Shadow or Lady Wu Fei, just make it, turn it, just get rid of her, let's end this. And but then tell me about how Yudan, what did I say? Anyway, Yudin, that's it. And tell me about how Yudin saves the day at the end, because that's what we've been waiting for.
Yeah, well, Lumia's got her third piece, so she's more powerful, and she turns into a giant bird, and he flies on her and fights Lady Shadow, who has become a monstrous shadowy dragon. So her body that she's inhabiting, this girl that she's been inhabiting for the last two books, gets killed, and her soul just manifests as this terrifying physical shadowy dragon, pure negation. They made the situation worse by killing the vessel. They're all right, we killed her, and then they're like, oh no, we made it worse.
Right. Yeah, that was funny. Dawa was looking at it like that was supposed to work, but that did not work.
I mean, that's but then so you didn't use the bright lance. So he's just going through all the weapons in this book. He's got his sword, his spear. Now he got the bright lance he got to use for a bit. And he just it was my first time getting to write the aerial combat stuff, which is very interesting because you got to have the dragon, because we're going to see more of that in the series of dragon on dragons and stuff like that as we go. Yeah. And but so it was writing that, trying to imagine it, trying to put it down there, how they're moving and dogfighting each other, like two airplanes, two World War I biplanes, sort of dogfighting in the air, trying to outmaneuver each other. And
I know how I remember Lady Shadow turned. You said something about she was able to turn quicker. It was obvious she had a lot more experience than Yudin did in that realm.
Yeah.
So
that sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she burst, and something came out of her when she died. We'll leave it at that. Yeah, something came out of her when she died.
Look at that. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to see what that's about. And then Yudin slams to the ground, perfect superhero style, and that was fun.
Yeah. He has to do that a couple of times in the series.
Really?
Yeah, aerial combat comes with risks.
Yeah, because he jumped off of Lumi. Yeah. And I was like, dude, are you sacrificing your life? Are we going there? No,
possibly.
On the cover of another book. And so I was like, what's he gonna do? And then I was like, okay.
And he just went straight into her and tore her apart. He used all that power he stole from her. So that's where we get to Yudin's second power. He has death. He shouldn't have it, but he does.
Right. And that comes from when he was on the tower with her dad, and when it was he was using the worm eye to do the ritual, and he used death magic, and then he kind of absorbed it. I think maybe.
Is that your theory?
That's my theory. That's a theory, yes.
It's a good theory. I think I confirm it in next book.
Okay.
So that is a good theory. I will confirm that. Yeah, It's a little spoiled, but they figure out like that's kind of must be where it came from. That so he's not a true death sorcerer or something, but he has the power, you know.
Right, because they didn't notice it. The Hordemen didn't catch it when they did their little ritual of like,
Hmm.
yeah, not allowing
Yeah,
him.
it's not an actual sorcery. It's
Right.
just works like the sorcery. It's something else.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like we're definitely going to learn more about that. And that should be interesting. One thing
We
I
are
do like is
definitely
that,
going to learn more about that.
good to know. So one thing I liked is that knowing the weapons that he has are flesh, blood, and illumination, right? Because the stone, the
He
sword,
has the sword is stone,
stone. Okay.
so which is flesh and negation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Because it's like
Yeah, because
petrification.
it puts a stone armor over him, and you need to have foundation sorcery or some foundation magic on you just to be strong enough to hold the sword
Right.
because
So it's
it weighs
flesh.
a lot, and wear that armor. So it's like you have to have like especially kind sword, and you have to be the right sort of person. But
Right.
yeah,
Well, he's definitely the right person for it. I'm glad he found it.
yeah,
So I know that we talked, what was it, Lumi, Udon, and Lady Shadow. I know that was the three topics I definitely wanted to mention. I am going to glance at what I sent you because there were some things that I was just,
yeah. There were some interesting stuff on there.
look at those messages. I tend to get excited when I'm reading a book, and if I know the author, I just have to say, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool." Um, one of the lines in the very beginning of the book, I believe it was Tauf that said it. He mentioned that familiarity defeats hate. Tell me about that.
I think that's a very true statement. Wish I remember this guy's name, but he was a black guy. He's still alive. But he befriended a bunch of like Ku Klux Klan members and got them to like, and just over the years of just like being cool with them, got them to like sort of abandon that ideology and leave it behind because they never really knew like a black person, right? They had their caricature of a black person that they were kind of raised in, and then they met one and realized like, well, he's really just like me, right? There's the only difference is he's got more melanin in his skin than I do, very surface level,
Right.
and it turned
Wow.
out like, and so like, yeah, so that always stuck with me. So yeah, it's when you know something, it's a lot harder to hate something. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can hate something you know very well, but it's more like disgust. Racism really more comes out of disgust than hatred. Um, but that same sort of like reaction you have to like rotten food is kind of the same thing that kind of hatred kind of comes out of from a psychological perspective,
It
and how
reminds
the
me.
studies on it are go. But like, but basically though, I used hate though because because you hate things that disgust you, right?
Right.
So like it's hard to be disgusted when you get to know and realize it's not disgusting, right?
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
It reminds me of when somebody will say something about those people, and then they'll say whatever about them, and then the person beside them is part of that group, and they're like, "What do you mean those people?" Well, not you.
I have from like that
You.
because she doesn't conservatives and I'm a conservative, so like she'll say stuff and I'll be like, you're talking about me right now, and she's like, oh shit, sorry.
Right. It's like, wait,
Mhm.
I can't say all of those people because you don't do that, and
But
you.
I'll do the same thing to the other side. So it's like you got
Right.
to be careful, right? Because we're both get along really great. It's like we don't talk about very specific political things, and then we'll get into very heated arguments. But other than that, we're cool.
Well, that I just love that phrase, familiarity defeats hate, because it just
Mhm.
I think that is reminded me of how Voni accepted Lady Eastjow as well.
Mhm. Yeah, they
Yeah,
got to know
and
each other,
vice
and
versa.
Lady Each Out, vice versa. There's Lady Each Out going like, "I'm not going to like take away your life because I got to know you." See, that was the problem. It's easy to hate. That's why propaganda is all about dehumanizing the enemy, whatever
Right.
the enemy happens to be. It's all about dehumanizing them, so you don't see them as a person. So you see them as an other, so you can get that hatred going, that disgust going. Of course, we need to fight them. they do this disgusting thing, they do that disgusting thing. You have to go stop them, rah rah rah. That's how that's what propaganda does, you know. And if you don't know them, if you're just you've never met a person like that, there's no one in your social life like that, it's very easy for you to just believe it because you don't use a lot of critical thinking in your day to day. You know you spend a lot of your mental energy like surviving and dealing with your own family and your job, and you don't have energy. You're not thinking critically when you hear like something on the news or on a talk show or on whatever, right? On YouTube, right? You're just,
Right.
you know, you're just like, it's just going into your ear and out the other end, and you're not really thinking about what they're saying. And it sort of starts to set in with you, and you hear it enough and you start to believe it, right? And then if you meet someone, suddenly you're like, wait, what? And you
Yeah.
know, you get cognitive dissonance because you're like, this isn't what I expected. You're different than I've heard, you know, and that it can cause a number of different reactions. It can cause you to snap out of it. It can cause you to get more entrenched in the ideology, sadly. But hopefully it'll get you out of it. You know, you can start to realize that, you know, hey, you've been told some bad stuff. And that's just, that's the problem with human beings. We're very much wired for a tribal level. It's so we're very much prone to just not trust the other because they're a threat, you
And
know,
that's
to
what
your
we
survival.
appreciate. That's what I appreciate, what we appreciate about you as an author is bringing together those different ideologies, even within a story, and having them meet each other and realize those things like, oh, I thought all the dragons were horrible. Oh, I thought the gods were bad, you know, vice versa. And then it's like, but Lumi, but Lady Eastjow, you know, wait a minute. I can't just apply that stereotype to all of them because I've met this one and this one's not like that, you know. And I just love I love Lumi in general and Lady Eastjow as well. But one thing that really struck me was I believe it was right at the end. Right before Voni went into the lake, she prayed to the God of Revelation, maybe. I mean, the God of
Probably Oda's here
it was God of Revelation,
because it's a revelation node, so that makes sense.
right? She prayed, and I can't remember what Lady Eastjow said, but basically it was like, "Amen." You know, she repeated what she said, and I was like, "Wait a minute, did a dragon just agree with a prayer to a god?" You know, and that
Really move that sentiment of the prayer than the actual um like praying to a god. Maybe the
right.
sentiment. But
Yeah,
yeah.
but it was just like she didn't shrink away from it, like, you know, she didn't scoff at it and all that they usually do. And so it just was, you know, maybe it's tolerance without acceptance kind of thing, but it's a step and it's a, you know, it's a coming together of two souls who need hope. And wherever one soul is seeking it, the other one is just supporting, you know, and it's like I may not have the same ideology as you, but I can understand the need to ask for strength, you know, ask for light. And that was really, really neat. You know, I feel like um, so many religions seek the same thing. You know, we seek love, we seek light. And when I'm reading a story that has two or three different ideologies that are fighting against each other, and then you have that moment where two people come together with totally different beliefs and they get each other, or they feel like, okay, you know, I get what you're saying. I may not completely understand it because that's not what I was taught, but I'm with you, you know, and I'll stand beside you. So that's just it's a powerful thing to see that come together. Uh, I read a
Yeah.
book by, or several books actually, by Jeff Wheeler. I don't know if you ever heard of that author, but he wrote
I,
the King
I
Fountain series.
I know the name. I've never read any Jeff Wheeler.
Mhm.
I know them, yeah.
Yeah, he has the King Fountain series, but I know that like basically one sect of people kind of worships the wind is more like a wind, and then the other the water. But two people came together in that story, and one of them said, the fountain is the wind is the fountain, you know, and they kind of realized that they were almost, you know, offering their hopes, putting their hopes in the same sort of uh, ideology. It was just two different points of contact, you know, and so it was really neat to see how they talked about their, you know, different religions and different thoughts as well. So that could go. That's a very powerful conversation.
Yeah.
Well, let me throw out there that I love that when Voni and Ruan at some point they play tic-tac-toe, but they don't call it tic-tac-toe. That's basically what they're doing.
Yeah.
In the sand, I think, and it keeps ending in a draw.
Because that's how
And
tic-tac-toe ends if you're not children.
yeah, yeah, it was like always a draw. But I also,
'Cause-
they were just talking about before that how unequal they were. And I thought that was an interesting moment for them to have a game where they both won, both lost, you know, to kind of give that idea that maybe they're not so unequal, you know.
Fair enough. I don't. It wasn't consciously done, but
Yeah,
maybe it was
that's
unconsciously done,
fine.
and that's cool if you still get it. Like people get things out of it that, like you're the author and you're like, huh, that's not what I meant, but I can see how you got there.
Yep.
I've had that with playing the dungeon master, and like, you know, my players always jump to the wrong conclusions, and I'm like, how did we get here? I know I didn't intend for this, but here we are.
But
And that's
this
just
is
people,
good.
like you don't know how people are going to interpret your stuff sometimes. So
That's
it's always
funny.
fun to hear like people talk. Or maybe I did intend this and I wrote that book 2 years ago and I don't remember any longer.
Well, I think it's impressive that you wrote what book 3 2 years ago, and now we're editing. You know, we're in the editing of what'd you say, books 6, 7?
I'm I finished my rewrites of book 8 yesterday. I have to put it through the Grammarly app today, which is gonna be like 2 hours of tedium. Um and then it'll be ready for my editor. She's supposed to get book 7 back to me in a couple days.
Okay, awesome. Oh, um, I'm looking at my notes, and I just saw. I love that Voni initiated the kiss, the first kiss. I did not expect that, and I was just so excited because it did, like you said, it made a lot of sense. Ruan is too conflicted right now to, you know, think of anything like that, and so that was fun. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I always intended for them to be like a couple, and for Rowan to like betray the apostle. That was always there. I didn't know how I was going to do it
Yeah,
necessarily, but like as I wrote book 2, I started to see the path, and then book 3 was just perfect for what I needed to kind of get her character to make that switch and get her over onto the team good guys
I
as
love
opposed
her.
to
Yeah,
team evil guys.
team good guys. I
Yeah.
love how I love seeing all of her conflict during the ride to the lake, um, because she saw how the Hordmen or no, not the Hordmen, the Drake
The
Knights.
Drake Knights.
She saw how the Drake Knights and Lady Shadow were just killing, you know, all of the women and children, you know, and
Yeah.
she hated it, but at the same time, she was so afraid for her life because Lady Shadow was just like, I don't like you anymore, die. You know?
Yeah, Lady Shadow, she's not messing around.
Mm.
She's she very has that ominous, like, yeah, no, she's capricious and she has no compunctions with death. She is basically the manifestation of the end of all things. She's negation, she's entropy, she's the heat death the universe, right?
Doesn't
So
help when you like death in the first place, I think.
yeah,
Not
so she doesn't need to be this way because um because there's another being made entirely of negation that is in the series, and we'll see if that being acts the same way.
we
We might
shall.
have already met that being.
I think it's mentioned.
I think they're pretty much on the theory that it was Gaul that pointed out
Right.
the piece of Lumi,
Because it was a
which would be
shadowy.
Babari, the goddess, which would have been the goddess Babari's husband. So Gal and Babari were married, and then that's a piece of Babari that is Lumi, because that's just what Eden called her because he didn't know what she was
Yeah.
back in book
I
one. So
mean,
he's like, Lumi, you like Lumi? All right, we'll go with Lumi.
how perfect is it that, the opposites attract and you have negation and
Yeah.
illumination that are
I
together?
definitely they're all like so flesh and blood are opposites and breath and warmth are opposites, and you'll see that on both the gods and the dragons, like the opposites matched up.
Huh.
They're flipped genders, right? So the dragons and the gods are different genders. So like the god of flesh, and then you have the dragoness of flesh, right? So I did
Oh,
that,
okay.
but
I didn't notice that.
yeah, no, they're flipped. So there's so like that's why Gaul is the god of negation. You have the dragoness of negation in Lady Shadow, but she still made it to the dragon of illumination. So
I love that.
yeah,
So we have Bibori or Bibori or Bibori.
Babori, I think. Yeah, Babori. I call her Lumi so much; it's hard to remember that. She's really
Yeah,
Babori.
Bibori and Gaul. Yeah, I think Udon does mention in this book that
Yeah, he's like if she's Lumi, then that's got to be what that shadowy worm thing was.
right.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Oh, let's see. I don't want to miss everything. I don't want to miss anything. I want to talk about everything. Oh, one thing that I liked was when Zai started using her revelation during the storm and the lightning would strike, but right before it strikes, she would be like, there, there. And I said, I would so use revelation magic to point out lightning and take pictures.
It's all about just having fun for the most part. She has to grow up in the series. That's kind of what her arc is. Is like, having the ability to see the future isn't all fun and games.
Right.
So that's kind of what she needs to learn, and that's like how you introduce a character. I mean, go back to book two. Like, how did I introduce her? She's running on rooftops and using her visions to like have fun, because that's who it is. Like I introduced Yuden um, going off into the dark woods to save his, to find a cure for his mother. And I have Voni as like wanting to go on the adventure, but being afraid because she's in the shadow of her father, that he's kind of crushed her down, so it's, you gotta, this is writing 101 people. This is very important. How you introduce your character, like what they're doing in their initial scene really is what you want to set the tone, set readers' expectations for what that character is going to be.
Right.
Right. That's
And
very important.
Dawa and Thaf are coming out of their rebellion against the apostasy. And the apostasy is on the island. Is it Athu? That's where they were from, right?
Yeah, they're from the island when the apostasy took over. They got ousted during that assault. Like they were one of the few that got out. So
So
it's
that's where
funny.
they started. Yeah.
I introduced them with one of them wanting to climb the cliff, and the other one not wanting to climb the cliff.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we learn their personalities real quick.
Yeah.
And then of course you have Ruan, who is dead set on the apostasy's goals until she kind of realizes their methods. So
Yeah, but that's it. She's on her mission. She's mission focused. That's what you see about her. She's mission focused. She cares about the people on her team.
right,
So,
right.
and she's a believer, but not. She might be serving an evil group, but she doesn't think they're evil, right?
Mm-hmm. Based on her, it's almost like, does she know that they're not evil, or does she just feel like the other side is definitely evil because of their willingness to sacrifice, her
Yeah,
to the volcano?
it's just I said it's propaganda. You know,
Yeah.
you never want to people don't want to think they're evil, and so they just assume that they must be on the side of good. You know.
Speaking of the apostates, I had a note about Ruan saw familiarity in the great apostate's eyes. We don't know anything else about that, so no spoilers, but interesting.
It
Very
is
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. It was a deliberate line.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I know you. I've learned more about your style, which I love, and I know that this is not going to go unnoticed. It will not be lost. um, also Thaddy, I liked the imagery of her as kind of like the wolf pack, the leader of the wolf pack, leader of the pack, vroom vroom.
Yeah.
She and also I had just seen an image the other day explaining how wolves travel, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I did see that it showed the leader of the pack at the very end of the line,
Mhm.
kind of watching over all the
Make
others.
sure that, yeah, to make sure that the weakest members don't get left behind. Yes,
Right.
I've actually heard
That's
that about wolves. Yeah,
say that
so
again.
I've heard that too. Yeah, so like you'll have I've definitely heard that. So you'll have like a couple of like the strong wolves up front, and then but the pack leader's always at the back, the alpha male, to make sure that the weakest members of the pack don't get left behind.
Yes. Yeah, I love that because she was actually at the back, at the rear of the line when they were traveling, to the next place.
Yeah, there's
So
well, definitely a lot of wolf imagery with that group. It's
yeah,
definitely. I mean, we were dealing with like tribal stuff, and their totem is the plain wolf. So yeah, I deliberately infused that in there.
yeah, that's
I think it's always like J.K. Rowling always was really good at animal imagery with her characters. She really described characters like as an animal. Like Snape was always swooping. He's very
oh yeah.
bat-like, yeah. And she'll often describe like Gryffindor characters with lion like descriptions, and
Sure.
so I always found that very
Yeah.
evocative. That she does it. She very much uses animal motifs to paint characters. Dolores Umbridge was the toad.
Oh yeah, that's
She's
right.
like just about the slimiest character in the entire. Like I hate her more than I hate Voldemort.
Right, exactly. Yes, I feel you on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember some of that now that you're talking about it. He's definitely swooping around. She was
Hmm. He's always
short,
swooping
squat,
around.
and
He's always
yeah,
lurking.
lurking,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, so one more thing I did want to mention that made me laugh. I was reading the end of the book, and uh, and I was walking down my hallway, and my partner got home from work, and she rang the doorbell because she had things in her hands, and I was walking, and at that time, Zai was screaming for Lumi to come save Udon. uh, Dawa had just taken off to try to kill Lady Shadow, and Ruan was going through this whole seeing children that were dying in her visions because she was exhausted and feeling guilty. And she rang the doorbell, and I was just like, I was like, "There's so many things happening right now." And I jumped out of my skin, and it just cracked me up because that was such an intense moment, and I love it. I loved how that worked out, and one more thing I did want to mention, Ruan at the end. Of course, we know from the reader's point of view and the author's point of view, of course, that she's going through conflict, that she hasn't been the one to initiate any slaughter. But at the end, all they're going to see is that she's coming to kill them. She's part of the group that's coming to slaughter everybody. But when she is standing by Voni at the end at the beach of the lake, and Udon comes crashing down like a superhero, uh, of course, at first he's completely defensive, but then Voni says no, and he believes her. And Dawa and Thaf realize she gave us the Bright Lance to go kill Lady Shadow, and Zai is just Zai. But I feel like the group as a whole took Voni's, word to heart, and they didn't just immediately discard Ruan as part of the enemy, unlike some people later. But they didn't just immediately discard her. They said, we'll give her a chance, or at least they seem to at the end of the book. They didn't immediately try to kill her,
Mhm.
and so that just shows the
There's
open-mindedness of your good guys. And I like that.
I will say there will be some lingering suspicions. I think especially Thaf, because I think Thaf and Bao they have their own baggage because they were there, like because they were there when their place was attacked, and Ruan was a part of that attack,
Right.
right? Ruan, burned. Ruan committed atrocities that day, right? Like she was there to burn temples and kill like servants of the gods and stuff. Yeah, so because that's like her baggage, as you see, because she has a particular vendetta against the goddess of earth blood for
Right. Yeah.
yeah, for almost being sacrificed to a volcano. So
Right. Yeah. She has such a powerful story, and they really all do. And there's not one of your main characters that we don't know more about. They all have a backstory, they all have their own quirks and their own motivations, their own inner conflicts, and their own relationships with every other member of the group. And I just love to see how all that plays out. So I'm definitely looking forward to book 4, which is Sands of Loss.
yeah, stands a loss.
Yes, I'm kind of scared because of the title, but I'm also looking forward to it at the same time. So,
They just might get to that desert in the next book, just
right,
maybe.
maybe sands. There's sand in it. So
There's
yeah.
sand. There's a dragon made of fire on the cover. So new dragon. Well, actually, we met the dragon actually in book 3. We met a third dragon briefly.
Okay.
Lady Raises. The
Oh, I think.
She's in the Drake woman. Like and she's very peppy and
Okay.
it's
Oh, that's
like
right. Yeah.
yeah, she's not up with like Lady Shadow. It's like don't listen, she's like trying to tell Bonnie like it's okay, don't listen to her.
Oh,
Bonnie's
yeah.
like, yeah, no, she's serious. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, that was our brief. We jumped to the apostasy for a little while with Ruan.
Yeah, and then we went to through the city that Zai's from and met on the way up because if we're for to pick up the Drake Knights and to meet the Breaker of Faith.
The
Is that his
great
title? Yeah,
apostate.
Breaker of Faith. Yeah, he's like an apostate general. He's like a dragonborn warrior wizard who his
Wow,
daughter was sacrificed to be the vessel for the dragon of the dragoness of war. So
that's crazy. And he's
yeah.
the one that has one piece of Babori, right? Lumi.
Well, the apostasy, the great apostate, has the piece of Bibori locked up in the cage.
Okay, I'm thinking of two different
He's
people. Okay.
Yeah, no, the Breaker of Faith is this dragonborn general, the Drakeman general that briefly gets met, that Lady Shadow um and Rowan meet briefly. He's very taciturn. He doesn't say
Okay.
much. He's very much
Right.
like business, and he's the one who basically just he's the one that's like he's the apostasy is in charge of that nation's military. Just keep that in mind.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's really there to set up later book plot points. Specifically book 4 plot points. We'll get to see kind
Okay.
of the results of that and kind of what the apostasy's doing, infiltrating this military and what their plans are. We'll get more into that.
Okay. I look
And
forward.
also, it gave us a preview of Lady Racy, who's on the cover of the next book. She's probably going to be important.
Possibly. Yeah. She's on.
Possibly, I put her on the cover for a reason.
Not to judge a
So,
book by its cover, but I'm judging a book by its cover. I'm
yeah,
going to say yes. She's going to be part of this.
she
Um,
be a different sort of dragon, though. We'll get a different perspective from her.
of course we do. I love I love that your characters, it doesn't matter how many you introduce, all of them have unique qualities and styles and perspectives, which, as we said, reality is important in fantasy. And we know that all of us, all humans, all people, all creatures are different. And we have different experiences, different perspectives that we bring to the table, and different relationships that we go through. And so this has just been a powerful story because reading fiction to me is a way to, it's therapeutic because when it's good fiction and when it has enough reality in it for you to see yourself in a character, to see others and other characters, and to realize how they get along and how they manage the world's pressures and the pressures from each other and survive and thrive. It gives you ideas, honestly, of how to survive and thrive in your own life. So it's healthy.
Yes, it is.
Well, I think we're going to wrap up for today, but I am very much looking forward to book 4, Sands of Loss. mostly. I'm kind of scared, like I said, of the title, but I'm interested to see how we're going to start this journey to collect the pieces of Lumi and see what that intelligence increase does each time. We started with the little fox, we got to a wolf, and now we're a
She's a
large bird.
toddler.
Yeah,
No,
a
she's a
toddler.
toddler.
Hmm.
She can say a word or two.
Right.
But
She's
so
growing
she's
up.
beyond the yeah, and then she'll be a little girl. Teenager Lumi is hilarious. I think
Oh, I can't
just
wait.
throwing it out there. Teenager Lumi, yeah, she's
But I'm so excited.
yeah, we don't get to her for a very long time though. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's another reason that I'm interested in the next story. I always want to hear more of JMD Reid's story because there's more Lumi. I mean, what other reason do you need? There's so many other reasons, but the only reason I need is that there's more Lumi. So
there's
I'm
definitely
sold.
more than me. Yeah,
All right, James. Well, let's wrap up for today, but I look forward to our next talk, which will probably be sooner than later because I am speeding through these books as fast as possible because I just have to know what's going on. So I look forward to our next talk.
awesome.
Thanks again. See you later.